Hey, hello. Welcome, welcome everybody. Um, Welcome to this new webinar. Um, I'm George, so I'm gonna be hosting the event tonight. We really appreciate your time. We're taking time, a little bit of time to wait for people that are getting connected right now. But in the meantime, I just want to say welcome again to this Pro School webinar. Thanks for joining us today. Um, just in case you didn't know, Pro School teaches product management, coding, data analytics, digital marketing, and blockchain courses online at around 15 campuses around the world. And on top of that, every week we offer some amazing local product management events, webinars, live streams, ask me anything sessions in our Slack community. Um, head over to proschool.com after this webinar to check them out. You will get more info there. So today we have an awesome guest presenting. I would like to introduce to you to George Jankovic. I think that I said correctly. So George has a decade of experience in technology and various product management roles, helping product teams build and launch web and mobile products. Uh, George is a big fan of lean startup methodology, design thinking, OKR, goal setting, and currently he's living in Austin, Texas, in the US. So I just want to let you know if you have any question, just type in the or write a comment. I will read the question at the end of his presentation, and of course we will let them to respond. So George, this is your time, man. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all what you can teach us today. It's all yours.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the intro, and let me just see how I can start sharing my screen.
Time, George. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Cool. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. I really appreciate your time, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time today to talk a little bit about finding your fit. I think it's a little bit of an unrepresented topic that people have been talking a lot about in the current state of product management, and what is that right role, what is that right company for product management, and how do you find one? So I wanted to distill something from my experience and something that I've observed and talking to other product managers and being a product manager for about 10 years, what I've experienced, what I've learned, and what I wanted to share with you today. So I want to start with a story that I think probably a lot of you know, but John Sculley was had a 10-year as a Apple CEO for about 10 years back in the early days of Apple, and he joins Steve Jobs at Steve Jobs' invite. He's a former president of Pepsi, and what's really interesting is he spent all of 10 years as CEO of Apple, and his resume, being a very successful executive at Pepsi, spent some time at Apple. And the third bullet point I put on here is he's ousted one of the greatest product managers of all time. He got rid of a guy that basically transformed a lot of our day-to-day lives. And the reason why I'm bringing up John Sculley here is you have this guy that has proven himself as a very successful executive and a leader at Pepsi, being invited by someone like Steve Jobs to work alongside one of the probably greatest entrepreneurs of our time, and still basically failing at your job in a lot of aspects. To me, I'm always thinking about, how does this happen? How does a guy that's really successful in one role does really poorly in another? And the answer, among other things, is usually the environment, the culture. Like, what is that culture that that you're supposed to fit in? Like, how do you find that fit for you, for your personality, for your goals and ambition? How do you find that environment that you're going to thrive in? Because your previous experiences and past successes don't matter. Every new challenge, every new role, you have to start in certain aspects from scratch. And I think there's a lesson in this story that, it's not just about bringing great people into companies and finding great companies to work for. They need to be a right match for who you are. And obviously, we're all unique individuals and we have our strengths and weaknesses. So today, product management is a popular role. But I know many product managers are not happy in that role. It's almost like, when I went to college about a decade or so ago, nursing was a popular and still is a popular career, but not everyone enjoys it. They like the financial aspect of it, but they don't really enjoy day-to-day job. Same thing with product management. I think not everyone is a good fit for product management, but it is attracting a lot of attention. It's a popular career because there's the financial aspect of it. There's a creative and technology aspect of it. So people are drawn to different things. But I am finding that product managers that I talk to, they're not happy in that role for various reasons that we're going to touch upon today. What my biggest learning from my experiences too, it's just not about finding a great job as judged by society. It's about finding a job you can thrive in, right? That's really important. You are different from other people, and what works for you or what doesn't work for you, it works or doesn't for others as well. So it's really important to know yourself, know your strengths and weaknesses. And I wanted to share today with you a simple framework that I've learned over time, and I think a lot of people who are making good progress in their career are using, is this 3-step process. Knowing yourself, understanding what's possible, and then identifying your principles. So I want to walk through each of these steps, and hopefully you'll have some takeaways from today that you can apply and use in your, whether you're searching for a first product role or you're trying to switch up your product role. I think this information is going to benefit both of those cases. So let me talk about knowing yourself. I think we as individuals, we know a lot about others, but sometimes we fail to know about ourselves. That's something that we think we know ourselves, but we're not objective when we observe ourselves. So we're obviously we see our world with our own lens, through our own lens. And knowing yourself is probably the first step. No matter what role you're in, no matter what career path you're on, knowing yourself will help go a long way to actually put you on the right path. And I'm still discovering myself, and I think you never stop discovering and learning by yourself. Every day is an opportunity to learn something new and learn something new by yourself. So I've done actually in the past a couple of different tests. You can do this. There's online information that you can easily find to actually start categorizing, like, where do you belong as a person? Like, what are the personality traits that you might not be aware of, that you can actually do a couple of different tests that will expose some of your strengths and maybe some of your weaknesses. The first one that I want to mention here is the MBTI test. That's a questionnaire indicating different psychological preferences in how people perceive the world around them and make decisions. This is really interesting test that I've done as well, and I think it's very revealing when it comes to, what do you like and how do you perceive the world around you. The second test, I think, is, you can easily Google information about any of these, but the second one is DISC profile. You can find out more about your personality and your behavior, how to work with others, what are the styles that you enjoy, how do you prefer working with others. I think this test can kind of start shaping some of those unknowns that you might have about what the ideal is for you. And the third one I suggest is the Strengths Finder. I think this is a very popular test. A lot of people have taken this one. I've actually had jobs before that they require all the new employees to take this test and publish them so that others can see, and others can right away look at this list of your strengths, kind of know how to interact with you, maybe adjust their style of communication or something like that to better customize their approach to you and who you are. So that test will actually tell you what you naturally do best. I think we're all naturally gifted at certain things and not so gifted at other things. So you can discover what you naturally do best and then learn how to develop your talents, really. Like, you just double down on what you do really well and do that even better, to the point where you become a professional, a top level performer in specific areas. In this case, product management, and specific skill sets in product management that really differentiate you from others. And maybe not pay attention so much on the things you're not great at, because that's where others would come in and help out with that. My 5 top themes are as such. Like, this particular test will reveal something like this. This can give you some kind of a framework, what are the potential careers or product management roles really that will fit into this kind of model? Like, what are the things that you should know by yourself when you're talking to others, when you're looking for a product management role, how you're going to work with others. All of that is really, really, really important. Other ways you can actually find out about yourself is asking friends and family, people who know you the best. They can, the simple question is like, how do you think I can communicate? How do you perceive me as in terms of, accountability, anything like that, like something that people can tell you that you're not seeing, and someone who's going to be frank enough to actually tell you the truth. Another good way is actually tracking how you spend your time. So if you start looking at maybe even a week's worth of your time, and you look at all the chunks that you're spending time, maybe outside of work or even at work on your weekends, what does that tell you? Like, what is your priority in life? Like, what are the things that you spend the most time on? And how does that shape who you are? And just don't tell me just Netflix all the time, every day, although we all love it. But maybe it is something that you start filling in your time with more activities that help you discover who you are. So trying new things, and maybe even finding activities that you've never done before to fill in your time and discover who you are. Now that you actually have a pretty okay understanding, like what are your strengths, weaknesses, who you are, I think the second step would be to understand what's possible. Understanding what are the roles that exist out there for product management, what are the things that you can start evaluating better now, and what are the different product types of product roles that exist out there. I think over the last 10-15 years, product management exploded in variety. It used to be just a specific role that showed up in some companies. Now it's a widespread thing. So the first distinction is a pretty clear one. Like, you can be a hardware or software product manager. I'm going to go through a couple of different breakdowns right now to just give you a heads up on what are the things that are really positive about both, or somewhat negative. The hardware product management really is all about longer dev cycles, so you don't release new products as often. So you're looking at some role that's more project management like, where there's a longer path, longer time to deploy, longer time to launch a product, because the hardware products are naturally not able to be quickly spun out and iterated on, just like a software product can. They're definitely harder roles to come by. There's less hardware product management roles than the software ones. And I believe technical background is an advantage in those kind of roles, right? It could be a very technical role that requires you not only to have basic product management skills, but also have some technical chops. For software, obviously, shorter dev cycles is an obvious one. And most product managers are software type. What that means is if you're a software product manager, you're going to have a lot more knowledge and experiences out there to learn from. Many more books are written about specifically digital and software product management roles. And the roles themselves, the job openings are definitely more readily available for software product management. Another interesting breakdown and is B2B versus B2C. I've done both in my previous experiences, and I think there's some interesting pros and cons for each. Where do you want to work with business customers or consumers? The first one about business, B2B, is you have to be really good at stakeholder management. So that role is going to involve a lot of talking to different departments in the company. Typically, B2B companies have a sales department and a marketing department and support and customer success, technical support. So there's all these different stakeholders. They all have a stake in your product. So your ability to actually communicate and manage all the stakeholders is going to be something that's emphasized in this kind of role. When you're deploying software, for example, in B2B environments, those need to be very carefully managed because B2B customers tend to be more active users than typical consumer would be. They are more vested in the software they're using. That software is usually more expensive as well. So they're paying a lot of money in some cases to use the software. You cannot just simply keep changing things over and over and move the cheese, sort of say, on an interface or change the back end and break something. So it's very sensitive here. If things don't work for business customers, those failures can be very, very expensive. So you need to be really good about having careful deployments when you're launching new versions of the software. Just to piggyback on that, the next point is about being less forgiving. So business customers are definitely less forgiving when it comes to deployment, but they're more forgiving when it comes to user experience. Although that's changing in the last couple of years with Slack and other B2B applications that have really lifted they shifted really how we look at business applications. They changed the user experience to the point where they also almost feel like consumer apps. But traditionally, business to business applications are more forgiving when it comes to user experience. They have that engaged smaller customer base in some cases where you can actually get decent amount of user interviews by polling your existing customer base, and they're going to be very responsive, especially if they're using the software on a day-to-day basis. You're not going to have a problem of recruiting a group of 10, 20 customers that you can talk on a regular basis because they are really vested and interested in helping you build a better product. In some cases, B2B companies are very sales and marketing driven. That there's just a big caution there. Sometimes the product is not going to have the leading word on what the path is and what the strategy is. You're going to see a lot of sales and marketing trying to drive what needs to be built and what is the next thing we should be working on, because sales is particularly talking to these potential customers all the time. So you're going to have to juggle between prospects and existing customers and preventing churn and all those things and negotiating with sales and marketing and what needs to get done next. This goes back to the stakeholder management I talked a little about in the first point. When it comes to consumer, a lot of consumer applications have high potential reach. If you think about a lot of popular apps and web apps today and Airbnbs and Googles, they have huge reach, millions of people. So they have ability to truly impact the world in terms of numbers. It does happen. They're big on A/B and B testing. They want to try concepts and see what works and what doesn't. It's very data-driven type of environment. So you're going to have probably a conversion funnel where you're going to have specific focus on converting customers as they're coming in, some kind of a checkout process, whether it's an e-commerce site or something like a mobile application. You're going to be very, very driven with data. Another product type I want to point out is you're going to have a technical versus a UX-centric product. So this is a really interesting distinction here. There are product managers, and I know a few as well, that, and I've done some API product management in the past, but sometimes API is a product in itself, that someone has to lead a roadmap for. Someone needs to build new features. So there are some product managers I know they just exclusively work on moving the backend projects. Now, ideally, you don't want to have product managers be completely cut off from that front end or user experience, but in some cases, that's actually the only way to manage it, because it depends on the kind of product and a company. UScentric is really mobile and web applications that I like to say. They have an interface. They actually have ability for you to interact with users and see how they're using the application. For the technical roles, I would say technical background is an advantage there. They're sometimes distant from the customer, although that's been changing with the API products. Really, there's some excellent API products with great documentation out there that really treat this as an experience, not just an API product. Best example everyone likes to talk about is Stripe. Stripe with its beautiful documentation, and you can definitely check out how they actually do product management. I would say that those roles are more. There's more emphasis on project management skills. And UX-centric roles are having a more high emphasis on good UX and usability testing. Large versus small companies, I think large companies, definitely more communication, definitely a little bit on a slower pace, more emphasis on project management skills. Smaller companies, startups, you're going to have the faster pace. You're going to have, as a product manager, to fill in some skill gaps that are existing on the team. So whether you're a designer or a product or development background, you might have to actually roll up your sleeves and do some of those tasks sometimes. You have a greater influence in a smaller company. You can actually make a bigger impact there as well. This, I just want to mention briefly, there's companies who are product driven and companies who are not. In a product driven company, product management drives the roadmap. They are the ones who actually shape the future of the product and the company, because company is the product in those cases. They have a high focus on high quality products. They are doing a lot of good work with making sure that their end-to-end experience is amazing. And there's other companies that, product is not a priority, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. They are more focused on sales and marketing. They invest more dollars there. They push for sales, push for marketing, and they don't really pay attention to the product itself. That's not a bad thing. It's just that might be a role or a company you want to work for, because maybe you want to find a company that is more product driven. And I think there's also product roles where core company offering is not your product. So there are companies out there, like let's say a grocery store wants to launch a product, like a mobile app. Their core company offering is not a mobile app. It is the grocery store experience. So your product role is really a secondary thing for the company. You're not going to be the one who's going to drive and change the company kind of, hey, we're going to just make this app be the focus and we start changing how we do things because we have this mobile app. No, really the core company value proposition is not the digital sphere. It's digital part, it's something else. So you have to be mindful about that. And then finally, just want to mention, reporting line, who you report to. It can be either through your manager to a CEO or CTO, CEO, CMO, or finally a chief product officer. Take a look at this. This is really important, because if the product does not have a seat at the executive table and they're maybe rolled under the CTO or some other role, the voice for the product is not as heard in these situations. So just be mindful of who we're reporting to and who does that product role report to. And then finally, I want to talk to you a little bit about, what happens when, what company you should go for. Should you go for a top company like Facebook and Google and try to get a product management job there? If you can, sure, but I don't think you're losing out a lot if you're not going to top tech company to just do product management. I want to talk to you about example of Brazil, a country that really has produced an amazing number of soccer players over the years. And how do they do it? They're not the richest and wealthiest country in the world. They don't have all the resources maybe that the United States has to actually and put soccer players through. But what they're doing different is basically, if you learn how to play soccer on the sand beach without a good soccer ball, without any cleats, without any equipment, imagine what happens when you actually get that. So I want to make a point that, you know, Google and Facebook and all the other companies have the resources and have everything you need to make you successful. But where you're really going to learn product management is the smaller, more nimble environments where you have to figure things out, where you are going to be pushed to, you know, when you don't have a designer, to create something yourself and figure it out and make it work. So without resources, I think your learning curve is going to expand dramatically. And then finally, figure out what your principles are. I want to wrap up. We're a little bit late and behind, so we're out of time. But as the final step, figure out what your product principles are. What are the things that you're going to apply in your product role when you actually figure out that's the right one? And how do you actually evaluate that opportunity against your principles? So think about the things you care about. And then when it's time to apply, figure out the questions you're going to ask for in your interview process. How do you discover that? Are they the company that chases the dream, or they're just chasing the competition? Do they value more the outcomes of their product efforts, or do they just care about executing on specific features and just deploying new features? Are they care about a simple something simple to build, or they're simplifying their user experience to make it really stand out, be something special? Or is it a complex product and they're just tacking on features and making the product worse and worse over time? Are they more about learning, or they just want to assume things and, you know, highest paid executive is making all the decisions and they're not about learning, they're about just top-down approach, and they don't want to just learn what the assumptions are? And then finally, find out whether the company is measuring their efforts. They're not just guessing. They're not just rolling things out and then moving on to the next thing, and they don't care what happened to the previous thing. They're actually focused in their efforts to measure things going forward. I'm wrapping up this a little bit short. Hopefully we have some time for questions, but I'm going to stop right here and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, George. I really appreciate your time. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has a question. Just type it in the comments in the Facebook Live, and of course, George is going to help with answering. But in the meantime, I have, we always have a question for all our guests. So, George, what is the most important piece of advice you can give an aspiring product manager? Well, and wait, which is your background? What do you study?
Background?
Yeah, what do you study? How many masters you have? I don't know. Just let us know, and which part you pass to become a product manager, and then that final piece of advice to aspiring a product manager.
Yeah, so I actually started. I graduated with a business degree, and I started in business development. Actually, with sales at a small software company up in Connecticut, and how I actually got into product management was really from the time that I was selling the product. I became the product manager of that very product. I had a great understanding of the market, of the customer, everything on that end. And then I moved into a role that I knew nothing about, and I started learning about it as I was doing, as many product managers do, and then starting to pick up technical and design skills along the way, but never forgot really how I got into product management, which is really understanding the customer. I think that's the really, really core thing that I would suggest to aspiring managers.
Yeah.
Put everything else aside, your experience about, technical abilities or your design abilities or your business abilities. It doesn't matter. Like, if you just focus on the customer, I always say features are temporary, products are temporary, customer needs are timeless. So like focus on that, and then everything else will flow from there.
All right, cool. You mentioned in your presentation about, B2B products, B2C products, but based on your experience, which side do you prefer?
It's interesting. I know a lot of people will say I prefer B2C, but I do enjoy B2B product space. I think it's sometimes can be really challenging, but also very dynamic. I really enjoy like visiting customers on in their work environments.
Yeah.
I've done that a lot, where we would take on field trips and we would visit customers and observe how they use the product in their own environment. So and I had some really interesting successes come from those, that research and ability to actually translate what we observe into something meaningful. So I do enjoy both, but I think B2B is something I spend more time in, so I have a little bit of a bias towards that.
I see. And now the company they're working, how many, I mean, how long have you been there?
I've been here only for about 4 months now. We're a small startup, about 18 people, and we're moving fast, not breaking things so much, but we're moving fast. And we're interesting space, a new space in influencer marketing and helping small, medium-sized businesses manage their Instagram. So there's a lot of new space things that are exciting happening in this area. So
Awesome. Well, I see. I think that we don't have any question, so nothing. So, George, thank you for your time. Thank you for your presentation. Thanks everyone who joined us. Before we leave, I just want to let you know that we have a lot of webinars all the weeks. I don't know if you are near to one of our campuses in the States, so you can, just choose which one do you want to go, choose the event that you want to go. Of course, you will be welcome. So thanks again, George, for your time, and thanks everybody.
all right, take care. Bye.
See you.